Okay, so the next thing we want to do, we've got all these bricks that are kind of still all created by the same technique across the whole board. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to pick some of them out. We're going to make them unique. So um, to that, when we mix color and water, we get a wash. Washes are really good for if you've got a surface that's carved or got some shape to it, and you're trying to have paint settle into those surfaces. Um, Washes work really well for that because they tend to flow places. When you're doing something like this that's flat, and especially if it's not quite flat, typically you want something that's more like a glaze. So if you remember, we talked about paint is uh, binder and whiting and pigment. What you want to do is you want to take some of your regular paint. You want to add some water to it to thin it out so that you get a little bit more transparency to it. But then you also need to add some binder back into it, so that what you get is something that's got some transparency to it, but that also is going to stay where you put it. So what I'm making here is just a little bit of a kind of a neutral um, sort of a glaze. Troy Longest, who was one of my scene painting mentors, called this sunglasses because it has that just sort of ability to tone things down without really having a big shift in it. You want to use something that's a little bit more dynamic than just black, because black tends to give you a kind of a dull sort of a result. But this a little bit of blue, a little bit of brown, a little bit of black. Make sure you got some glaze in there, some varnish in there. So you're going to get this kind of a neutral. This one's a little on the warm side, which I think is fine for this. And so when I paint it on over here, you can kind of see it's fairly transparent. I'm going to add just a little bit more of my varnish to that. And if you were doing an actual scene painting project, you'd be doing this mixing in a big bucket, and then you definitely want to keep it stirred up. One of the problems that I've run into here and there is I'll come up with a great working scene painting technique on my sample board, and then go back and I try to do it on the real thing, and all of a sudden everything's extra washy and extra neutral. And what I realize is that it's because all the important parts of the paint are on the bottom of the bucket, and I just need to stir it back up. So what I'm going to go do is I'm going to go through and I'm just going to pick a few bricks to um, to darken up with this. So I'm just going to paint out the inside of that brick. I'm going to try um, not to get it on the mortar if I can help it. If it comes and goes a little bit, that's fine. Doesn't have to be full thickness everywhere, and it doesn't have to be 100% consistent. The unfortunate part is that this glaze that I'm giving you is actually going to probably give this stuff a little bit of a sheen. It's not it's not a matte medium. Um, and because we're working with such a small scale here, we're not adding so much paint and water as to knock back the qualities of it. Um, when you do this glazing, you want to make sure that you're getting kind of a random assortment of bricks glazed, because you don't. Chances are your bricklayer isn't picking which bricks are slightly off in color and putting them in different places. It's possible there is some style that relies on that, but one of the things that means is that you are going to find bricks that are right next to each other uh, that are slightly darker. It means that you'll have larger spaces between bricks that are darker. You're going to have a truly random pattern, which means that here and there you're going to have some odd consistencies. Um, if I am worried about getting one of these patterns right because I'm not great about creating them on my own, what I'll sometimes do is I'll just take a handful of washers and I'll just throw them up in the air and let them land on what I'm painting. And then usually I adjust it a little bit from there, but it helps me. Whichever ones they land on, those are the ones that I paint. And that helps me get that randomness established without it being too planned, too consistent. So go through. I would say glaze about, I don't know, 10-20%. So 6-8 bricks, maybe 10, depending on how you feel. So I'm going to turn this off and let you do that.